All right, listeners, we've got to talk about Warren Buffett
Oh, absolutely.
and this recent move that has pretty much everyone scratching their heads.
Yeah.
Occidental Petroleum,
Right.
OXY, it hasn't been a market darling lately.
No.
It closed at $47.13 on December 20th.
Okay.
That's 33.8% down from its 52-week high.
Yeah, the market sentiment around Occidental has been, well, decidedly bearish.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what makes Buffett's latest move so intriguing.
Right, because it's almost like he's looking at a completely different picture than everyone else.
Yeah.
Berkshire Hathaway, they just bought another 8.9 million shares.
Wow.
And that's, worth about $409 million.
Yeah.
So that brings their total stake in OXY to a whopping 28.1%.
It's a significant stake, and it's certainly not just a sudden impulse buy.
Right.
Remember, Buffett's been steadily increasing Berkshire's position in Occidental since 2019.
Uh-huh.
He's clearly been building this position for the long haul.
So what's he seeing in Occidental that the rest of the market seems to be missing? Is this just classic Buffett swooping in to grab a bargain when everyone else is running for the hills?
Well, let's not forget Buffett. He's renowned for his value investing approach.
Right.
He looks for companies with strong fundamentals that are trading below their intrinsic value.
Right.
And in Occidental's case, he might be seeing a disconnect between the company's current valuation and its long-term potential.
Okay, so maybe he thinks OXY is a bit of a steal right now.
Yeah.
But beyond the price, what else might be drawing him to Occidental specifically? Is there something about their business model or their position in the market
Sure.
that aligns with his long-term view?
There are a few factors to consider here.
Okay.
First, Occidental is a major player in the oil and gas industry.
Right.
And despite the shift towards renewables, oil and gas are still vital energy sources.
Right.
Buffett might be betting that demand will remain strong enough for Occidental to generate substantial cash flow for years to come.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not like oil and gas are going to disappear overnight, even with the push for cleaner energy.
Right.
Plus, Occidental is actually the largest producer in the Permian Basin, which is one of the most prolific oil fields in the United States.
Yes.
So they've got a pretty strong foothold in a key area.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while their profits have dipped this year, they're still on track to have their most profitable 3-year stretch ever.
Wow.
From 2022 to 2024.
Okay.
That suggests a certain resilience in their business,
Right.
even during volatile times.
Okay. So they've got strong production,
Yeah.
a prime location, and a history of profitability. But what about the other side of the coin? What are some of the risks or challenges that Occidental is facing?
Sure.
Because I'm sure there are a few, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Every investment carries risk, and Occidental is no exception.
Right.
Their profits are projected to decline in 2025.
Okay.
And there's uncertainty about the future of their government dividends,
Okay.
which are expected to drop significantly.
That's definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole elephant in the room,
Yeah.
which is the energy transition.
Right.
The world is moving towards renewable energy sources.
Yes.
So how does a company like Occidental, which is deeply rooted in oil and gas, navigate that shift?
That's the key question.
Yeah.
And it's something that Buffett must have considered carefully.
Right.
Occidental has made some investments in carbon capture and storage technology,
Okay.
and they're exploring renewable energy options.
Mm-hmm.
But their core business is still very much tied to fossil fuels.
Right. So they're dipping their toes into the clean energy pool,
Yeah.
but they're not diving in head first.
No.
Is that enough to satisfy investors who are increasingly focused on sustainability?
Yeah.
I mean, is Buffett being too old school here? Betting on an industry that many see as being on the decline.
It's certainly a gamble,
Right.
and it goes against the prevailing sentiment in many investment circles.
Yeah.
But remember, Buffett has built his fortune on contrarian bets,
Right.
on seeing value where others see only risk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So he's basically saying, I think you're all wrong about this one.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
He's betting that the market is underestimating the staying power of oil and gas,
Right.
at least in the medium term.
Okay.
And he might be right.
Yeah.
We've seen oil prices remain relatively resilient this year, even with the energy transition gaining momentum.
So we've got a company with some solid assets and a track record of profitability,
Yes.
but also facing some significant headwinds.
Uh-huh.
And we've got Buffett, the legendary investor, betting big on their future despite those challenges.
It's a fascinating situation.
It's a fascinating situation, and I'm eager to dig deeper into the details.
Absolutely. It's interesting to look at Occidental's financials in more detail. Yeah.
Because they paint a somewhat mixed picture.
Yeah.
On the one hand, as we mentioned, 2022 through 2024 are shaping up to be their most profitable years ever.
Right.
But when you kind of zoom in on 2024, you start to see some potential, well, warning signs, I guess you could say.
Yeah, right. Their net profit for the first 9 months of 2024 actually fell by 25.6% compared to the same period last year.
Yeah.
That's a pretty significant drop.
Exactly. It makes you wonder if their earnings momentum
Right.
is starting to stall a little bit.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of factors that could,
Yeah.
put further pressure on their profits in the coming years.
Like what should investors be paying attention to when they look at Occidental's numbers?
Well, for one, the dividends they pay to the government are expected to, plummet, really.
Yeah.
By about 31% in 2025 to about $1.8 billion.
Yeah.
That's a big chunk of change.
Yeah.
That won't be available to reinvest in the business.
Right. Or return to shareholders.
Wow, that's a big hit.
Yeah.
And weren't we talking about some uncertainty surrounding one of their key projects in Texas?
Absolutely. Their Texas Permian Basin project.
Right.
A significant source of revenue and reserves for Occidental.
Yeah.
It might not get renewed.
Wow.
Losing that would be, a major blow to them.
Right.
Plus, there's the added pressure of the Colombian government's ban on new oil contracts.
Yeah, okay.
Which could, limit their growth opportunities in a key region.
So it sounds like there's some legitimate concerns about their long-term profitability.
Yeah.
Even if their stock appears undervalued right now.
Precisely. A low price doesn't guarantee a good investment.
Right.
You also need a clear path to future growth and profitability.
Mm-hmm.
And in Occidental's case, that path seems, a bit hazy at the moment.
Right. It's not enough to just be cheap. You have to have a good story.
Yeah.
A compelling reason to believe that things are going to get better.
Yep.
And speaking of a good story, let's talk about the big narrative
that's
shaping the entire energy sector. The energy transition.
Ah, yes, the elephant in the room.
Right.
The world is undeniably moving away from fossil fuels, and investors are increasingly factoring that into their decisions.
Right.
Occidental can't afford to ignore this shift.
So how are they handling it? Are they making the necessary moves to adapt and stay relevant in a world that's increasingly focused on clean energy?
Well, they've taken some steps.
Okay.
They've invested in carbon capture and storage technology, which aims to capture CO2 emissions from industrial processes and store them underground.
Yeah.
They've also, dipped their toes into renewable energy projects.
But it sounds like their core business is still very much anchored in oil and gas production. Do you think that's a sustainable strategy in the long run? I mean, are they doing enough to position themselves for a future where oil and gas might play a much smaller role?
It's a difficult balancing act.
Yeah.
They need to capitalize on the current profitability of their oil and gas operations.
Right.
But they can't afford to fall behind in the race to decarbonize.
It's like they're trying to ride two horses going in opposite directions.
Right.
Can they really pull that off?
That's the billion-dollar question.
Yeah.
Only time will tell if Occidental can successfully navigate this transition.
It's a fascinating challenge, and it's one that a lot of companies in the energy sector are grappling with.
For sure.
But let's not forget that Occidental's fate is also tied to the global oil market.
Right.
Which is, notoriously unpredictable.
Absolutely. And right now, the oil market is sending some mixed signals.
Yeah.
While global oil demand is projected to grow in 2025, there are also concerns about softening crude oil prices, which could squeeze profit margins for producers like Occidental.
So on the one hand, you have increasing demand, which is good for oil companies. But on the other hand, you have factors that could put downward pressure on prices.
Exactly. For example, refinery throughputs are expected to peak in December 2024. That could lead to a buildup of inventories and push prices down.
So it's a bit of a tug of war.
Yeah.
Increased demand versus increased supply and potential bottlenecks in the refining process.
Right.
Where do you think this balance will tip?
Yeah.
Which force will be stronger in the end?
It's a tough call.
Yeah.
But the International Energy Agency is projecting that global demand growth will actually accelerate in 2025. So that's a positive sign for oil producers like Occidental.
Okay, so there's at least some reason for optimism.
Yeah.
But still, this uncertainty in the oil market just adds another layer of complexity to evaluating Occidental's prospects.
It certainly does. If oil prices remain strong, they could benefit significantly from their increased production levels. But if prices soften, their profits could take a hit.
It's a gamble just like any investment.
You're absolutely right. And that's why it's crucial to understand the risks involved and make informed decisions based on your own investment goals and risk tolerance.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
We've talked about Buffett's contrarian bet, Occidental's mixed financial performance, and the unpredictable oil market.
Yes.
It's a lot to digest.
It is.
Yeah, it really is a lot to consider. So let's try to distill this down for our listeners. What are some key takeaways, that they should keep in mind as they kind of try to make sense of this whole Occidental situation?
I think the most important thing to remember is that even Warren Buffett, with his incredible track record, he doesn't have a crystal ball. His investment in Occidental is a strong vote of confidence, but it's not, it's not a guarantee of success.
No one is infallible. So what else should our listeners be thinking about as they kind of weigh this potential investment?
Well, they need to carefully consider both the positives and the negatives surrounding Occidental. On the positive side, you have their, robust production levels and the fact that their stock might be undervalued. But then you have to balance that against their declining profits. The uncertainty surrounding future dividends and key projects, and of course, the looming energy transition.
Yeah, it sounds like it really comes down to how you view the future of oil and gas.
Yeah.
If you think demand will remain strong enough for Occidental to thrive, then this could be a great opportunity. But if you think the energy transition will significantly erode their market share, then it might be best to steer clear.
Exactly. And there's no easy answer to that question. It requires careful analysis of global energy trends, technological advancements, and government policies.
So what advice would you give to our listeners who are kind of, trying to decide whether to invest in Occidental? Should they buy, sell, or hold?
The best advice I can give is don't just follow the headlines or rely on anyone else's opinion. Even Warren Buffett's. Do your own research. Dig into the company's financials. Read analyst reports. And form your own conclusions. Investing is about making informed decisions that align with your own risk tolerance and investment goals.
Absolutely. There's no one-size-fits-all answer in investing. What might be a great investment for one person could be a terrible investment for another.
Exactly.
It all depends on your individual circumstances and your outlook on the market.
It's all about informed decision-making. Which is what we aim to encourage here on Investing Talk podcast.
Well said. So as we wrap up our look into Occidental Petroleum, I want to leave our listeners with a few final questions to ponder. First, do you think Occidental could truly be a hidden gem that the market is overlooking, as Buffett seems to believe? Or are the challenges they face too great to overcome?
It's a fascinating question. And only time will tell what the answer is. Buffett clearly sees potential in Occidental, but there are legitimate concerns about their long-term viability in, a rapidly changing energy landscape.
Second, is Buffett right to be so bullish on oil in the long term? Or is he clinging to a fading industry, unable to adapt to the new realities of the energy market?
That's another great question. Only time will tell if Buffett's bet on oil will pay off. The energy transition is a powerful force, but oil and gas are likely to remain significant energy sources for years to come. It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
And finally, what does this whole saga tell us about Buffett's investment philosophy and his willingness to take risks? Is he still the Oracle of Omaha, or is this a sign that he's, losing his touch?
I wouldn't go that far. Buffett has always been a contrarian investor, willing to get against the crowd and see value where others see only risk. This Occidental investment is, simply another example of that approach. Whether it turns out to be a brilliant move or a costly mistake, it certainly reflects his unwavering belief in his own judgment.
It's a compelling story that we'll continue to follow closely here on Investing Talk podcast.
Absolutely.
We'll keep our listeners informed about Occidental's performance, the oil market, and any other developments that might impact this, this intriguing investment saga.
We'll continue to analyze the data, track the trends, and provide our listeners with the insights they need to navigate the ever-changing world of investing.
And on that note, we want to thank you for joining us for another episode of Investing Talk Podcast. We hope you found our discussion of Occidental Petroleum informative and thought-provoking.
We always appreciate having such engaged and curious listeners.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and share this episode with anyone who might be interested in this fascinating story. And be sure to leave a comment with your thoughts on Buffett's move and the future of Occidental Petroleum. We love hearing from you.